Welcome on in to the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast. Today is a Mariners on Tap version of the podcast with the MarineLayerPod guys. Really good guys. We kicked it with them for about an hour and talked everything Mariners. And as always, I'm one of your co-hosts, Sammy, or Sammy on Tap on social media.
And I'm George, or George on Tap on social media.
We talked about everything, the trade, the off season, and how we're all feeling. And George, it feels like we all feel about the same.
Yeah. Disappointed, I guess, would be the best word to describe it. But, well, you guys will see that on the pod.
Yeah. Let's just hope we can be a little better than we actually all think we are. Thanks for tuning in today. You can find us everywhere at Seattle on Tap. Everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all those different places. So tune in. And as always, this is the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast, and enjoy the show. Let's get it going. You're listening to the Sports on Tap Seattle podcast. I'm Sammy, and with me, as always, is my older brother, George.
Your favorite place to be a fan of Seattle sports. Now let's get this party started.
Tito, are you ready? Are you ready? You ready?
We can just get started now with introductions. I want you guys to introduce yourselves, names, you guys' podcast, your guys' social medias and all that, so people know who we're talking to.
Go ahead, Lyle.
Sure. So I'm Lyle, one of the co-hosts of the Marine Layer podcast. We're all across social media. We've been doing the podcast for a little over a year now, and we have an absolute blast doing it. And TJ and I are both lifelong Mariners fans like the two of you are.
And I'm TJ. I'm the other host of the Marine Layer podcast, and I echo everything Lyle just said. So thanks, Lyle, for taking all the hard work out of it.
Yeah, that's perfect. that was easy introduction. Okay. Well, Mariners made a trade. Mariners made a couple trades yesterday, and it's been a interesting offseason to say the least. It's been an interesting, I feel like, mood from the fans overall. It's been a lot of, what are they doing? There's been a lot of anger from fans that they're not doing enough. Whether, it's interesting as fans to me because we sometimes act like we know better than what, the general manager or the ownership or whoever's doing. But I think the fans had some, honest reason to be upset this offseason. And yesterday, I want to get your guys' opinion on the trades. Pretty much Robbie Ray for Mitch Haniger, and I have trouble saying it, the D. Scalfani, and trading away. Yeah, it's close enough. All right, it's a tough one. And then trading away Cabby. It's a Raleigh or Rayleigh. That's another one. Rayleigh, there it is. Okay, so that was, some people think it's a good trade. Some people think it's bad, as always. I want your guys' opinion about the whole day. Forget one trade, but the whole day in general.
The whole day was a win.
Okay.
Because we know they're not going to spend that much money. It's been pretty apparent. I think if they were going to spend some money, we would have an indication that there's going to be dollars handed out and significant dollars handed out. And it still hasn't happened. It would have probably gone to Blake Snell. It would have been such an obvious decision to just say, hey, here's $30 million. You're begging to come here. Actually, you only take 27? Perfect. You'll give us some friendly opt-outs? Perfect, because you just want to pitch here. That's great. So if that was going to happen, it probably would have happened by now. So when that's not the case, you're like, okay, what's the most cost-efficient way to make your team better? Well, so the Mariners now are sitting in the exact same spot they were after signing Mitch Garver, but they have gotten better at two different outfield spots, and they added a swingman out of the bullpen who could also start games for you. By the way, the worth of an Anthony DeSclafani type pitcher on the open market these days is $15 to $16 million. I think he's making 12, but instead you got that for just offloading Robbie Ray's contract and going cash neutral this season. So that's a win in a vacuum. That's a win. You are better from the point you were earlier in this offseason. But I also put the point there that you are also probably not better than you were last season. Not yet. There still needs to be something else there. But overall, this trade was a win, given the resources they had available to them. And what happened, I'm signing off on it. I like it.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what you said there for a second. I think sometimes fans the disappointment is not that we won the trade, right? Like, I think we could all agree they won the trade, but the problem is we feel like as fans that we lost the offseason. So I think fans are just like waiting for that big move to where we feel like we actually got better, as you said, than last season. So even if we have these small wins, I think the fan base in general takes a look at it and says, okay, I don't care if we got a small win on a trade. We want to win the offseason, and we obviously have not.
And that all goes back to the spending money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because if you want to win the offseason, you have to go do what the Dodgers did. The Mariners aren't about to spend over $1 billion on two players, and I think everybody knows that. I think the trades they made, I'm going to not reiterate what TJ says, but echo a lot of the same statements. They got better. They got better from where they were at the start of yesterday with these trades. Luke
absolutely.
Raley hits. Yeah. Luke Raley hits, and he hits righties very well. Mitch Haniger still hits lefties, and if you platoon him with Dom Canzone, which it sounds like they're probably going to do, that can work. Because if Mitch Haniger's better than A.J. Pollock was last season, and the bar for that's not set very high,
Hopefully.
then that's a win for the trade. Then they got better, at least in that spot, than they were at the start of last season, and they definitely got better than they were at the start of this season. So I think the Mariners are absolutely a better team than they were just 24 hours ago. The difference is they're committing to being competitive in the sense of winning the offseason. That, what you guys are referring to, is committing to truly, truly being great, to spending that money, to putting together a perennial World Series contender, et cetera, et cetera. What they're doing, what this model currently states, they're committed to being competitive. They're committed to being in the wild card race, and this model can work. We saw it with the Diamondbacks last year. You get into the playoffs, you get hot at the right time, you make a run, but that doesn't work every year. The Diamondbacks making that type of run, it's not sustainable from year to year. So I think that's where fans' issues lie, is saying after sitting through the rebuild, after waiting to see this young core form together, we were told a lot of money was going to be spent after that. And now with all this root sports stuff and a few other factors, it's not really happening. So I like the trade. I like both trades. It's just not saying this team is committed to winning 95, 100 games.
Yeah, that's where I think it's – you mentioned the Diamondbacks, for example, and obviously they – had their run, but it feels like they've been trying to make those moves this offseason, right? To take the next step up. They're spending some money, they're trying to make moves. And even for them, like, they don't have to go try to get somebody like Gino, right? But it's better than having a Evan Longoria at third or whatever they were platooning at third. So they made a move for that. They went and signed a pitcher and paid money for him. And what was the other impact move they made? There was one more. They made one more move that I'm trying to remember what it was. But I know they brought back Gurriel. And what was the other one? I know it's on the tip of one of your tongues.
Well, they signed Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yes. Okay. The pitcher. And so they're out there spending money, right? Or at least trying to add and continue to get better. And so that's where I feel like the Mariners are trying to,
Sammy.
paste things together.
He's in the room right next to me, so I can hear exactly what he's saying. He's basically saying, like, unlike the Mariners, they committed to basically making moves to try to get much better quicker than the Mariners did. And I think, at the end of the day, like, I understand what the Mariners front office is doing. I understand what Jerry DiPoto's doing. I understand winning this trade. But I just feel like fans are itching for something bigger, which we need to, like, temper our expectations and realize that's just not how this organization runs.
I don't think fans should settle. Excuse me. I don't think fans should settle for anything, saying like, oh, so the Mariners say they're never going to spend, so we should just accept that they're never going to spend. That's a bad way of thinking about it, because you want to hold these people to the highest standards possible. You want to hold them to wanting to win a World Series, in which they tell you to your face that they want to win a World Series. I keep harping back to the video they put out at the beginning of last season where they made a nice hype video and they brought up a giant whiteboard and they wrote "Win the World Series" on it, underlined it twice, and kept it pinned at the top of the profile until about June when they were still under 500. And they're like, "Oh, maybe we should take this down. Maybe we should take this down." But when we come into the context of the offseason, like, we understand, like, you can either set an unrealistic expectation for what will actually happen. Lyle and I both have things we want to happen. We wanted them to make a marquee splash. Signing Blake Snell would have been a no-brainer decision. But unfortunately, in the realistic version of the Mariners offseason, whether you believe in their plan or not, that was never going to happen. unfortunately, was never going to happen. So we can either get all wound up about something that was never going to happen, and sure, it sucks, but keeping negative energy like that around just kind of wears on you. I mean, doesn't that? It just makes you miserable. I don't really want to be miserable. I don't really want to be miserable. I'd rather be more upbeat and positive. So
that's
that
why sometimes I stay away from Mariners Twitter the last few weeks, because it has been the absolute most negative Twitter possible interactions you could possibly have this offseason.
Absolutely. It is about as toxic as I've ever seen it. And for good reason. Because we're talking about a franchise that has existed for 47 seasons, and they have made the playoffs 5 times. 5 times. I do love the stat that they've had more ruptured testicles. They've had now as many ruptured testicles in franchise history as playoff appearances. I think it's 5 apiece. That's incredible. And people just want a little bit more than that. Just a little bit more. That's okay. You can want that. But I think we just don't want as much negative energy. So when a trade like this happens in a vacuum, we say, okay, context neutral, this is good. And I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, if this trade happened, let's say in July, and the team was 12 games above 500 or fighting for the division, I think the fan base would have been applauding it and enjoying it and really excited for it. It's just when it's the off season, sometimes you don't look at these trades as, oh, we got better.
Yeah. Sure. And I think they did get better, but it's just not the spending money factor that I think a lot of Mariners Twitter is a little bit obsessed with at times. I think sometimes some people on Mariners Twitter are only happy if they spend money, even if they irresponsibly spend money. And I'll use this as an example. People were obsessed with getting Trevor Story a couple years ago.
Right, I remember that.
Does any Mariners fan want that Trevor Story contract now? I don't. I can tell you that. So while there are guys that are absolutely worth spending money on, I said 2 years ago I would have loved to see them sign Marcus Semien. I would have loved to see them make a move like that. Obviously, this is total pie in the sky, even though TJ and I tried to will it into existence with every bit of our muscles and bones. But yes, I would have spent every penny to pay Shohei Ohtani, but he was never coming anywhere near here, and that was made very apparent when he made his decision on where he was going. But sometimes you don't always have to irresponsibly spend money. There are other moves you can make that still make the team better. And again, I think this one does. I'll be totally honest, especially the second half of this trade from yesterday with the Jose Caballero deal to Tampa for Luke Raley. I'm not sure if Cabby's ever going to put up another year like he did this past year. He might, but we said it on a reactionary show that we just did. There is a world where Jose Caballero doesn't put up 2.5 wins again at any point in his career, where he's just a utility guy, where he just helps off the bench, steals some bases, plays some good defense, and that's it. If you're going to get a guy who hits as well as Luke Raley does for 5 years of club control with him too, in exchange for just Cabby, that's a win.
I think
that trade is absolutely a win for the Mariners.
And it doesn't matter how you get better. You just need to get better.
Yeah.
Right.
From all avenues. Just get better. That's all the rational person can ask. And then there's, as Lyle mentioned, bad faith. The only way to get better is spending. Not necessarily. There's a pretty good correlation with it, but it's not the only way. But you just need to find a way to move the needle somehow. And they have yet to really do that. And the 3 competitive years they've had in 21, 22, and 23. They've been good, but still haven't pushed the needle farther than that. And I don't blame people who are skeptical if they'll ever do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm one of those skeptics who doesn't believe we'll ever do that. It's just, you said something earlier, and I want to go back to it about the fan base. And, I said maybe temper their expectations, and you said it's a bad precedent to set, right? Like you want your fans to hold these people accountable.
Correct.
But when you say hold them accountable, what more could the fan base do other than complain on Twitter or be toxic, right? Like at some point, our hands are tied behind our backs. What would you, as a fan base, what could you do to even hold these people accountable?
Not show up and cancel your Root Sports subscription.
Yeah, I guess that's it. But then they're going to spend less money
Money's
because they're
tight
not going to
now.
make
Wait
money.
until people stop watching, going to the park.
Exactly. And just can you guys hold on 1 second? Sammy, I hear him talking. I think he thinks he's on the stream. Let's see what's going on. Let me go. Yeah, because I heard him respond to that.
No, I can hear.
Let's just fix this. What time is it at? 13:40. All right, 1 second.
Oh,
There's
there we
Sammy.
go.
Man, I could see you guys the entire time, and I was like trying to respond, and like I was
Why
like,
can't they
yeah,
hear me?
well, yeah, no, I'll be like, yeah, well, I think I'm like about to say something, and somebody else is like, well, let me tell you. I'm like, all right, and like for me, it shows me on the screen, like I see all of you, and my even my like microphone thing was moving. That's never happened on Riverside for me. I was fully in here. We were talking about. The not showing up to the stadium is one way the fans could show or cancel your root subscriptions. And I was going to say the only issue with any boycott the fans do puts less money in the ownership's pocket. While maybe long term they will make a change. In the meantime, they'll just make the team worse because they're going to spend less money and they're not going to make any moves potentially. Is how I see it. I think it's a weird situation because obviously this was a great last couple of years for ownership for the Mariners. The stadium was packed a lot of the times. It was an exciting time, and it's just that we kept talking about. I don't even know where I last was cut off, like on the microphone on this pod, but it's just that small difference of yes, we're making moves to get a little bit better, and we're not doing that one thing that makes everyone probably get on board, right? We've talked about Mariners Twitter being toxic this year. We've talked about all these different things, and I just want one day where there's something the Mariners do that's bigger than yesterday, right? Bigger than a small move where everybody gets on board and is just really excited to see what happens with the Mariners moving into the season. And I just don't know if we're ever going to get that with the Mariners because I don't know if they're going to make a humongous move or spend big money. And that's what frustrates me because I just want that one move, that one.
I will say it's probably a step below what you're referring to, Sammy, but I felt like the Teoscar Hernandez trade was pretty unanimously a win amongst Mariners fans last year. Now, the issue is he didn't play the way everybody thought he was going to play. So to that point, yeah, it didn't work out. It would be, I mean, he was fine, but it wasn't the level that everybody expected him to play at. So to your point, if they ever made a move that just fired everybody up and then they played the way they're expected to play, yeah, that would be a fun day to see. To see that happen.
It tells you a lot about the franchise that not everyone can unanimously agree that signing the greatest baseball player of all time is a good decision.
Oh yeah, like we would get comments when we talk about Shohei this offseason saying, "I don't want him." It's like, well, what do you mean you don't want him? Who do you want then?
Yeah, we would get to say I'd say it on like a YouTube video and be like, "You're a fucking idiot. Who would want Shohei Ohtani?" I'm like, well, he is like the greatest player to ever play baseball, so I wouldn't mind him on our team. Obviously,
if we're gonna sign any free agent, why not it just be the best one ever?
Yeah, you're right. You couldn't come to a unanimous decision on that. Even that's true. Like there are a lot of people that would say no, not worth it, and that's why. To your point, Lyle, like we'll probably never get to a point where there's something that happens where every single, obviously Mariners fans like, yeah, great, what an offseason. Like there's always going to be something. What is it? Let's see. Blake Snell?
They sell the team.
Would be. Oh, you'll still find someone like Stanton was a great owner, man.
Love that guy.
Probably. His son.
Yeah, you see the profitability on that?
Ooh. Yeah. That is honestly, though, the one that I think you're right is pretty unanimous is that people would love to see the team sold. And, I mean, I think for good reason. I mean, obviously, we'd probably, if we'd get an owner that would spend more, it's probably the main reason, but it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen. And I wonder if after a few years, with all the hate that he gets towards him, I don't know if he checks anything online and sees
Sammy,
anything,
not just that, with the value of sports teams are skyrocketing right now.
Yeah.
And Stanton, I mean, he's rich, but he's not filthy rich. I mean that.
He's not.
I mean, okay.
He's not owner rich.
Okay,
his net worth is over $1 billion.
Yeah,
so
but he's not like
not sports ownership rich.
He's not sports. I mean, he's one of the poorest owners in Major League Baseball. He's, he goes to the table. Though he's not poverty, obviously, but he's not that worth $10-15 billion. And if he can sell the team down the line for $7-8 billion in 10 years.
Let's remember, though, guys, when we're talking about ownership, it's not one person.
Right,
it
it's
is
a group.
Multiple people's money that he has to spend. He's just in charge of it. Yeah, he doesn't even own the biggest share of the Mariners. So, sure, his net worth is only $1 billion, but still, that's that is a significant amount of money. I
That's
think
not
that the
much.
biggest point that a lot of people come back to is like there's too much wealth in the Pacific Northwest for there not to be a spending that is in the 12 to 8 range of payroll. There's no reason not to. It is one of the wealthiest parts of the country. Why is there not a group of people with enough capital to actually invest a proper amount into the team? And it's a fair argument.
Right.
Because if teams like the Arizona Diamondbacks or the Kansas City Royals can spend $100 million this offseason, like, why can't the Mariners? But they haven't.
And here's the other side of that coin, too, right? Is if their model is to say, even if we're not going to spend on free agents, if we spend our money by after extending Julio, which obviously they've already done, if they extend George Kirby, if they extend Cal Raleigh, if they extend Logan Gilbert, then people's attitudes might change a little bit. The issue we stand with now, though, is not only are those guys not extended, but there's no talks of it. And Cal Raleigh's a Scott Boras client, so I don't know if that one's even going to happen. So that's the other side of it is they're also not extending their own guys, at least not yet, aside from Julio and Luis Castillo. So people are kind of sitting and waiting in limbo saying, well, are they ever going to take one of those two sides?
It's going to be interesting.
That's a great point I did not think about.
Yeah, and I would love, actually, I want to hear your guys' opinion on the future of the Mariners. Like, I know we're talking a lot about this year specifically. Do you see this core, even if it's just based on opinion and feeling, like, I want everyone's thoughts on what do we think's going to happen in the next, 2 to 4 years? Is this core going to be the core we're seeing, or are they just going to keep, because the Mariners, they love to save money from here and there, like, grab a couple pieces, put it together like the way they're doing it this offseason. So who do you see staying and who do you see not, even if it's just based off opinion of the young core?
Well, based off of what we saw yesterday in offloading significant future cash of Robbie Ray's deal, I don't know if they can afford George Kirby. I'm going to be honest. By the time he reaches after his first year of arbitration, which would be 2 full seasons from now, I believe, unless I forget if he's already hit Super 2 status or not. But by the time he hits his second year of arbitration, he's going to start getting pretty pricey. And to keep him and extend him, if he keeps on the trend he's going, he's probably going to cost over $30-ish million, which they're not paying. Logan Gilbert, who's a year ahead of Kirby, probably a little bit less, but still on the market. He'd probably be worth anywhere from $20 to $25 million, depending on the team. I don't think they can afford that either, unfortunately. And then you go to the position players, and they've signed Julio, which, credit to them. They shelled out and they did that. Cal Raleigh, based on all of his indications, will not sign an extension in Seattle. I don't know what reason they've given him to do that, given his comments and given his representation as well. Right. So it's like, when you look at it that way, it's really hard to see the core here. And you said 4 years. I think that's realistic. There might be a new version of the core that's significantly cheaper, but the current version is going to be, I think, too expensive, especially if they keep trending the way they do. It sucks to hear, but that's what it is.
It's Saturday
right?
morning, man. Like I was happy.
I would reiterate a lot of that. Maybe they surprise everybody and get to a couple of extensions, but like TJ said, these guys are going to be really expensive. If George Kirby keeps pitching like this, he's going to get a ridiculous contract in free agency.
Right.
So he'll be around for at least a couple more years. I think all those guys that we just talked about will be around for at least a couple more years. So in that 2 to 4 year range that you're talking about, Sammy. But if the Mariners get the sense that they're not going to sign extensions, when they get to a point where there's a year left on each of their deals, maybe a year and a half left, they may have to sell high and get a good return on some younger players for him, which, like TJ just said, that does suck to hear. I want to see these guys here for the next 10 years. This is a really fun core. The question is are the Mariners ownership group committed to doing that? And if they claim at least they don't have the money, they may have to ship these guys away, which really does suck. And then all of a sudden the core in a couple years becomes guys like Julio, Harry Ford, Cole Young, and others. So like TJ said, the core may change.
Yeah, it's tough to hear. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, there's no way. I think you're absolutely right that there's no way you keep Logan, George, and Cal Raleigh, all 3 of them, and sign all 3 to extensions. It's just not going to happen.
No. maybe again if they had new ownership by then, who had more capital, perhaps, but it just doesn't really make any. There's no inkling that would happen.
Yeah, there's no financial sense
between now and then, and that's unfortunate because when this happens, the Mariners will have essentially turned into the Tampa Bay Rays. That's what they do. They get great homegrown players, and then as soon as they get expensive and near free agency, knowing they can't re-sign them, they flip them for prospects. And the Rays model works for Tampa Bay because they don't make any money because nobody goes to their games and nobody watches their games on television, which is correct. But the Mariners don't have either of those problems and yet still operate that way, which we'll get back to the point of the fan base hating everything that happens and looking on it in disgust.
Yeah, I think that's a good point is that, when I see teams like Tampa Bay do it, I think it's a lot easier to sit there and understand, right? You say, okay, there's like 14 people at the game, like every weekday, and their fan base is not the same size. There's even, you brought up the Pacific Northwest. You think about like just the area too, with the money that's in the area of the Pacific Northwest. You think about all those factors, and we shouldn't be the Tampa Bay Rays, right? We should be. I would hope we're more like the San Francisco Giants is a good example maybe, right? The San Francisco and Seattle have a lot of parallels in some ways, and even the money situation and the city and all these different things. It's a good way to look at we should be spending money like a San Francisco Giants if we had the right ownership group. But we act like the Rays, and that's where I think it's tough. And it's tough to think about, what's our windows. I feel like it's harder to, I guess our window as a Seattle Mariner fan because I thought the window was maybe last year. I thought after making the playoff run, we would have, which we did. You made a good point. We did actually go for T.O., which was more of a surprising move or more out of our characters going and making kind of a big move like that. But it obviously wasn't enough, or people didn't play good enough because last year it didn't turn out like the year before. But I thought that this is the window where now we have to this offseason go make that big splash and try to win now because you're probably never going to have. Well, not never, but it's hard to have a situation where you have 5 or 6 or 7 potential starting pitchers that all have some value, right? I mean, they got rid of Robbie Ray. We still have 5 pitchers plus a 6th now. Plus, if Hancock comes back one day, like we still have a huge stack of pitchers and a good enough young core. You would think now is the time, and it's just weird to me that it feels like they're still building this thing as if it's not quite yet the time, but the time will run out. Based, like we were just saying about these contracts, we're not gonna have these guys forever and on smaller contracts. So it's a little that's where I think the frustration comes is that we're not operating. Sometimes it feels like we're not operating in our window, but this is our window. That's how I feel.
Well, and just to go back to the Tampa Bay Rays or Tampa Rays, whatever they call them now, is that Devil Rays? Are they just the Rays? No more Devil Rays.
They're the Rays, right?
The Rays.
Yeah, they're just Rays.
Rays. So I think we would have no issue if our organization running like the Rays if we had the success the Rays had. But they've been to a World Series. I don't know how many playoff appearances. They might have more playoff appearances now in their franchise's history than us, or getting close.
They do.
Yeah.
I don't even need to look that up. I know. That is true.
Yes.
So if we operated like the Rays but had the success of a Rays, or we operated like the Marlins did back in the late 90s and won 2 World Series and operated in that sense, yeah, I think the fan base would be okay with it. But the problem is we're operating in a way without the success.
So I'm actually going to push back on that a little bit.
Right.
I don't think the fan base would be happy to operate like the Rays because I think the way the Rays and the A's operate, it's just bad for baseball. If you had all 30 teams operate that way, it's terrible for the sport. It's awful.
Yeah. Or you might get every player playing on 30 teams.
Yeah, you don't grow that way. You don't grow the game that way. The A's aren't growing the game of baseball. In fact, they're doing quite the opposite. Tampa is doing the same thing. They're not. How many generations of young baseball fans are they inspiring in Tampa? Probably not that many because nobody can watch the games.
Right. And at the end of the day, like, you don't fall in love with a player. I think that's like, with our fan base, with Griffey, right? We had a love affair with him. I don't think any Tampa fan has a love affair with anyone, maybe.
The whole reason why the Yankees and the Dodgers and all these historic franchises are just so successful, so rich, so all this is because from day one, they have invested in their product and in their fan base year after year after year after generation after generation after generation. So when this for example, this cable television collapse we have going on right now. Well, people are not going to go out of their way to watch the Mariners on cable television. So like, okay, I'll just drop Root Sports, no problem. When people in New York are considering, do I want to drop the Yes Network? It's like, no, not really, because generationally the Yankees have treated us so well and invested in the product so much that all I want to do is go watch it. And that's, again, a generational thing, and all this leash they've given their fan base over the years that keeps the people engaged and keep them investing their money into the franchise, which is beneficial on both sides. And then we see what happens with the Mariners when they don't do that, and the fans have zero tolerance for this stuff and are willing to essentially cast them aside and give them no money, and then the money problems get worse.
Yeah.
Very fair way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's a tough reality too. But I would agree. That model can work, and it's like I was saying with the way the Mariners are making these trades that they just made yesterday, that this can work. This team may win 88 to 92 games, get into the playoffs, and get really hot. Maybe they'll win more games than that for all we know. Maybe everybody clicks, and they truly have a chance to win the AL West. Maybe. But that's not what it doesn't feel like that team that they're rolling out there right now is definitively good enough to overtake the Rangers or the Astros. So, and then tying it back to, again, if all 30 teams tried to just sell off their best players when they get expensive, baseball wouldn't grow that way, because you don't keep your hometown stars around, and then as a result, it's hard for fan bases to keep being fans, because you want to see. It's why so many Mariners fans grew up loving Ichiro, loving Felix, why this new generation is going to grow up loving Julio. They're going to be around a long time, and you can use a bunch of different teams and their homegrown players as examples. But if every team were to just sell off their players 3-4 years into their rookie contracts, it's kind of a tough way to grow the sport.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think there's a mix of both of all what all three of you said that I would agree with. I mean, there is some sense of, if I agree it's a bad way to grow the sport, but I do think some people would be still happier even if we were growing it the wrong way, but we were winning games. So there's always there's both sides to it, right? But it's not good for the sport, and that's fair. And I think
now you're in the worst spot possible, where you don't win like the Tampa Bay Rays, but you're starting to operate like them, and
and then it gets really
that's how you lose fans.
That's how you become like the Oakland A's at some point, right? Where now it's like,
correct.
We're not winning, and we're trying to operate this cheap way. Now there's 2,000 people at the game, and now we're moving. So, obviously there's more to reason why fans are not happy there, but it collapsed the fan base.
And let's remember the ramifications this would have on the money that the Mariners ownership actually has invested when they bought the bar across the street, when they I don't know how many tens of $1 million they invested into the Press Box Club this past season. Well, if no one wants to go buy those tickets, also there's a Diamond Club renovation recently as well. If no one wants to buy these luxury items and go spend their money there, then that's money wasted. And people feel like, well, if you invested into your product, there would be more people that would be willing to pay these absurd prices to go really make you money and really push the needle in that stadium. And unfortunately, now they don't. Yeah. People don't want to do that this season.
Well, and let me add something to that. A lot of the people that buy Diamond Club seats, that would buy Press Club seats, they're probably people that, I shouldn't generalize, but I feel like more often than not, probably are not the die-hard fans of the team. They're people that just kind of want to go and hang out. And I think that's what irks a lot of Mariners fans, too, a lot of the time, is it feels like a lot of times, at least in their minds, the ownership group caters to the fans that are more casual. So I'm okay showing up on a summer day with my friends or my family. We'll just hang out. Who's out there playing? I mean, I'm sure most people know Julio Rodriguez, but if Cal Raleigh comes up to the plate and half the people sitting out in the pen, it's like, oh, who's this catcher of the Mariners again? Oh, yeah. Sure, he looks pretty good. I think that's where fans kind of get, again, I'll use the word irked again sometimes. Is it feels like the ownership group does a lot of things to cater to the casual fan, and it's not to cater to putting a winning ball club on the field, or at least a true World Series ball club on the field, and as a result, drawing people to the ballpark that way. They're okay with the promotional nights. They're okay with selling one of the nicest stadiums in baseball to their fan base. And as a result, their attendance always draws well, because there's enough casual fans that still go no matter what, just to hang out, and it's a fun thing to do in the summer. rather than this group of diehard fans, which a lot of are on Twitter and saying, we'll just invest in winning.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%,
well
actually.
said.
Yeah, because it is, and you start to see the annoyance on Twitter, or how the people getting irked on Twitter this year, where when they're posting
X
about their
now,
promotional
Sam.
giveaways, X, sorry, on their
I'll never
promotional
call it
giveaways.
X.
It's hard. It's a weird saying now. Those promotional giveaways and the firework nights and all these different things, you'll see people in the replies, I don't care, spend money. Like the diehard fans, right? Like, we don't want the firework night. We don't want the drone night. We don't care about the Hawaiian shirt. Like, that all is catered, like you're saying, to the casual fan. That's, I'm going to bring my family to the game today and just watch. And you'll start to see the fans get irked on Twitter, on the replies, just, we don't care. Go spend money. Go sign a bat. Go do something. So I do think that's a good point, is there is a lot of catering towards that casual fan, bring people to the ballpark. Like, it's a nice summer night. We'll do some fireworks. We'll get more families in. And it's less catered to those that are, watching 162 games and diehard fans, which that is probably where the negativity on social media has been all off season. And we tend to see the diehards talk more, right? Casual fans not on Twitter talking about nice afternoon at the ballpark.
Right.
Mostly the diehards.
I do want to just add something to that. I think sometimes in the whole entire social media X, we live in a little bubble that we don't realize, like, sure, we are catering sometimes more to the casual fan, but also the casual fans are coming a lot less to the ballpark. I mean, I remember when the Mariners were really good, you could not get a ticket. It was 181 home games, and it was hard to get a ticket. And now it's much easier. So I think the casual fans, when they see a team winning, I mean, just like any city, people get upset about bandwagon fans, but I don't get upset about it because they're coming to the ballpark to see a good product. So I feel like if we're going to talk about casual fans, I think you need to put a winning product on the field to have, sure, a casual fan might go one time a year to go to the Diamond Club. But if you're putting a winning product on the field, you're going to be selling out, 60 out of 81 ball games.
You don't have to convince us of that.
Yeah.
Gotta convince the people at the top whose money's invested in all this.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a business, right? But like, we're four guys here, and I just feel like, God, there's ways to make money with spending money, and there's ways to save money too. And it's just like, which one is the right way to go about it?
Yeah.
Like, spend money to make money. That's what I think.
That's what I think too. It's easier said than done because we're not reaching in our pockets.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just always said, if we want to use Ohtani again as the extreme example, but I'm still going to use it, that contract, no matter what he was going to get, is going to pay for itself. What I said about
100%.
like the Dodgers spending over $1 billion on him and Yamamoto, you think they're not going to make that up? Oh, no, they're going to make significantly more off those two than they did to get those two on their team. They just bought 100 million fans in Japan by doing that, because I guarantee you now, not only is all of Japan going to be Dodgers fans, but they're going to show a ton of those games in Japan. People are going to be watching the Dodgers extremely closely. For all we know, a couple of these other stars from Japan, when they get eligible to come over to America and pick their next team to play, who's to say they're not going to play for the Dodgers too? And then again, Japan basically just becomes another region of Dodgers fans. So that's an example of spending money to make money. The Dodgers are going to make way more off those guys than they ever did spending on them. And a lot of teams could do the same thing. Now, you have to have a sales pitch good enough to agree to get those players to play for your team. And we've seen a lot of reasons over the years that have been difficult to get free agents to Seattle, whether it's the travel, the weather, it's hard to hit baseballs out of the yard for the hitters that are free agents, and a few other examples too. You have to get them here. But if you build up enough of a good reputation and you're winning a lot, it gets a lot easier. So the Dodgers, for example, look, I know it's nice in LA and it's sunny and they have a huge fan base, but more than anything, that team wins. And I think that's a reason that people are attracted to go there.
Right, but look how quickly times have changed, right? Like the Dodgers, I think, was it 15 years ago? Their owner was forced to sell the team, and they were financially in a worse situation, maybe even the Seattle Mariners were. So things can change quickly with the right ownership group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one day they'll get Steve Ballmer to own the team. That's my pie in the sky dream for an owner. Because Steve Ballmer, by the way, is worth way more than Steve Cohen, for example. And Steve Cohen has no issue spending money. Now, Steve Ballmer may not be interested in baseball. He may not be interested in owning another team aside from the Clippers. But I just kind of sit there and dream and imagine sometimes, like, man, what if he owned the Mariners? What if he was more than okay operating with the highest payroll in baseball? Because you see how fired up he is.
And no salary cap.
Yeah, and no salary cap. I mean, that guy lives and breathes Clippers. He is as passionate an owner as you can find. And if he was invested in Seattle baseball and was showing up at the games, getting fired up with all the rest of the fans, and then also said, I'll spend whatever money it takes, like, that guy has a lot more money than Steve Cohen does, which is crazy. So,
and we'll have a lot of bathrooms at T-Mobile.
No, it'll probably never happen, but I'll sit there and dream.
And I think this is where people are kind of like, it is unfortunate that Paul Allen was never a baseball fan. It wasn't his thing, because it would just make sense. Like, it would just make sense. That dude invested more into the Portland Trailblazers and Seattle Seahawks than most owners do. There's very few owners that are as stable and supporting and invested in his teams as Paul Allen was. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and his sister Jody is now in charge of those things. But there's no lack of capital there at all. I mean, this dude would put a satellite on his yacht in Europe so he could watch Trailblazers practice. What would that be like for the Mariners if he had interest in them? Unfortunately, he didn't. It would make too much sense. So now, I mean, people are going to go all the way to saying, hey, does Jeff Bezos want to buy the Mariners? Like, Amazon's headquarters are here. Why wouldn't he want to own the Mariners? I mean, Amazon bought the rights to the Kraken Arena. Why not they just buy the Mariners and then buy the rights to T-Mobile Park once it comes up? Why not?
He did
probably never happen, but again,
yeah, it won't happen. Jeff Bezos did just move to Miami, right? So I think he might be out on the Mariners. But I have these same dreams sometimes. That Steve Ballmer's one of them that I always think of. Of course, we think of Jeff Bezos too, and you have the money of. Obviously, he's not interested. Bill Gates, he would have done something a long time ago if he was interested in a sports team. But
if he wasn't interested in solving healthcare issues, I wish he was solving baseball
Mariners.
issues.
He has enough money. He could do all of the above.
Yeah, he could do everything he wants. Yeah, he has enough money to do them all. It would be awesome to see, because I think, Lyle, you said it, and I think it's the simplest thing to sports, and especially baseball, is you spend money to make money. And like you said, the Dodgers, they're going to make their money back from what they spent. It's pretty clear and simple that all the money they spent, it will be back in their pockets in some way, shape, or form. And it would just be nice if we had an owner that was willing to shell out money at unlimited expense, with no barriers to it, and they'd probably get their money back. I mean, and especially when it's the right people you can market. So it would be an awesome dream to have somebody like Steve Ballmer, because he does love it. He loves sport. He loves sports. I don't know if he likes baseball, but he loves the way he's with the Clippers and wants to build an arena and wants to, he's fine with any trade they make, any free agent signing. It would be cool to see, and it feels like it should happen, but who knows if it's just in our dreams. You never. Who knows? Who knows what's going on behind the scenes?
And until then, people may have to settle with the fact that the Mariners' blueprint to win the World Series is going to be revolved around trying to win 88 to 90 games and getting hot at the right time.
Right.
Yep. And that's probably where we're at.
Yeah. With that being said, what do you guys think for the rest of off season? And do you think any moves are we going to be done? Like, anything you would like to see happen?
So there's a couple different ways you can go about this. I think they still need to make one more move, and if it's going to be anywhere, I think it has to be third base. I think they've got to upgrade that position. And if they're going to do that, there's really only one free agent that's out there in terms of moving the needle, in terms of signing a third baseman, and it's Matt Chapman. And I'll be totally honest, we did an episode about this, profiling him. I don't know if he's worth the bang for your buck. There's a lot of reasons where, for a contract that he is looking for, that could end up working poorly for a team that signs him.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that for sure, but there are just certain things about Matt Chapman that say, you know what? That could go south pretty quick. Like, if you look at his offensive season this year, he had one phenomenal month, and then otherwise he struggled big time. So I don't know if that's worth the Mariners' money to give him 7-8 years or not, to try to hope that he continues to be the Matt Chapman that he's been in years past at times. But again, he's He's had his ups and downs, and he's going to ask for a lot of money. So if that's what you come to the conclusion of, along with the fact the Mariners probably just wouldn't pay for him, period, then you look to the trade route. And there's a couple different ways you could go about it. Do you trade one of your, I say arms for a third baseman? It probably wouldn't be Miller or Wu at this point after the Robbie Ray trade. Could you trade Emerson Hancock for Jorge Polanco from the Twins? Maybe. Would they think about trading Ty France for a third baseman, and then you could move Luke Raley to first? I doubt it, but I guess it's a possibility. So the what's left in the offseason is kind of on them. If they really want to push their chips in and make one impact move, they can do it. It's just about committing to doing it, and that's where everybody sits right now saying, well, are they going to really do it or not? Because I think they need a major upgrade at third base. I really do. I think if they could go get somebody that can make a difference, or if it was at least a league average third baseman and they found an upgrade either in the outfield or at first base. Like, for example, if they were to trade Ty France, get a third baseman back as a result, say you traded him to the Twins, I'll use the example for Jorge Polanco, but then you went and signed Rhys Hoskins. Well, that's a major upgrade. Then you can leave Raley in the outfield, but are they going to do that? I don't know. It could just result in a couple of marginal moves in terms of what they do the rest of the winter.
If I'm going to guess, it's going to be nibbling around the margins, because I mentioned it earlier in this podcast, but I mean, people just have the expectation that there's going to be a needle mover move. And for the most part, it just hasn't been ever in Jerry's tenure, ever. It's been always nibbling around the margins. What gives you hope, I guess, so their payroll right now is at about $121 million, and Jerry was very apparent at the beginning of the offseason saying he's confident the payroll will be higher, and even after all the Root Sports stuff, continue to emphasize, hey, I think our payroll is going to be higher than it was last season. Well, they got about $20 million to go to get it higher than last season. Yeah. So if they're actually planning on adding $20 million, then I think there could be an impact move there. But I'm going to have to see it to believe it, because I honestly don't believe it. I feel like they're pat right now. I think, especially with some of the quotes Jerry said yesterday, it was very, very PR-y. It was, okay.
I have one up right now. I feel like today is the first time this offseason we were playing the game tomorrow. We feel good about the team we have. I saw that one, which was very...
But it's just like along those lines. It's like, hey, if opening day were to be right now, we'd be okay with this team. Where it's like, are you like really like like we still like there still needs I think we all know there is upgrades that are still needed, and it just doesn't. It gives you sort of the idea that okay, they've shed enough salary now, and they've upgraded some spots they've wanted to, and they're like, okay, well, we're good now. It's like shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because if they truly are like 88 wins, we're fine with that. Which, by the way, I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's 54%. That literally is 54%. If they're okay with that, then they don't have to make another move. They're okay rolling into opening day with this lineup, and it's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
Yeah, and we can try and predict. Yeah, we can try and predict what moves they'll make, but if they make another, it'll be like the trades we saw yesterday. Nobody ever imagined Mitch Haniger would be back on the Mariners. I don't think anybody had talked about Luke Raley this offseason. So everybody tries to predict what they're going to do. But with Dipoto, it's kind of impossible, because usually he makes moves that nobody's expecting. Like the one he made this winter that people had tabbed as a potential fit was Mitch Garver. But usually that doesn't happen. He usually makes moves that nobody's thinking about. Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. I think we're right there at that 85 to 88 wins, and it's not awful, right? It's better than the Mariners I was watching that were not even close to making the playoffs for many years, but it's not necessarily where I hoped we would be at this point, and we do need to upgrade in the infield. It's not what I like to see.
It's frustrating for fans when Jerry said, hey, 54%, I said that, I put that number incorrectly. That's our base. That's our floor of what we're aiming for. But if you're just content with staying at 54%, which again is right where they're out right now, like what franchise should operate like wanting to just lay on the floor, like stick on your floor on purpose? Like, what does that tell your fans? Like your fans like, okay, so I'm gonna open my wallet at the bottom amount that I've ever wanted to.
Yeah, I feel bad for Jerry though. I don't think this
I do
is
too.
not Jerry's. Like, you give Jerry a treasure chest full of money, he might do it differently. But he's just playing with the hands he's dealt, but he's the scapegoat out of it all.
He's had a terrible run of owners, just terrible.
Yes. Even in Anaheim, it was bad.
Yeah.
He had to resign.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a rare. I remember I was looking it up recently. I was like, I couldn't remember why he left Anaheim, and I went and looked it up, and it was like, I don't know how many times GMs like resign, and it was like not seeing eye to eye with ownership and the spending, and I was like, that's a pretty rare case. Like, you're a general manager in the MLB. Like, most people are dying to keep their jobs, and he's like, I can't do this anymore. And it feels like it's almost on the same track with Seattle. Eventually, he's just going to be like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Says a lot about Artie Moreno, that's for sure.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe it is better in Seattle.
Yeah. You guys have anything you're tabbing as something you'd like to see the Mariners do the rest of this winter? I mean, we kind of talked about what we think might happen or what we'd like to see happen. Again, if you were to find a way to get a really good third baseman, or you were to find a way to make a couple trades and get Rhys Hoskins here or get another outfielder here, like, that would fire some people up. But is there anything you guys have looked at?
I think for me, it's just basically like you said, just if we can find an upgrade. You can't predict what Jerry's going to do, get an outfielder, get a third baseman. But, I mean, there's no one really out there on the free agent market that I'm killing myself to go sign. I like our pitching staff. I like our bullpen. I kind of just, if we can upgrade somehow through a trade, great. Otherwise, yeah, it sucks. But there's not a free agent that really moves the needle unless you're overpaying for, like, except for Chapman. But that doesn't make me excited. It gives me Jeff Cirillo vibes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd spend on Cody Bellinger. Lyle doesn't agree on this, but if they were to go sign Cody Bellinger, I think stick him at first base. That's fine.
All right, yeah, first base.
Throw him wherever. And then what? Get rid of Ty France?
I guess in that scenario, you'd probably trade him. Although if they sign Cody, I bet you he plays the outfield because he's more valuable out there. You'd probably move Rayleigh to first if they did that, if I had to guess.
That's fine, too.
Yeah. I've come around to it a little bit more as the weeks have gone on, just thinking to myself, well, he is a different hitter now than he used to be, and he is more of a bat-to-ball guy, and he plays such good defense. The thing with Bellinger, though, is he is going to try and demand so much money, especially with Boris running his campaign. It just goes back to the theme we've talked about time after time over the last hour or so here. Are the Mariners going to fork up the money for that? I have my doubts.
And more importantly, he's significantly better than most of the players they have on the roster, which is ultimately what it boils down to.
Yeah, he'd probably end up being our second best hitter.
Yeah.
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably would.
Yeah, I think, I think we're going to just stay where we're at. I know, and it's not what I like, because at the end of the day, I really think they're just going to roll out with that infield with Luis. I always have trouble saying this one too. Urias. What's the right way to say it? Is that the right way? And Josh Rojas is going to be out there, and JP and Ty. And this is kind of what we're going to roll out with. But I would love. I know Matt Chapman might be an overpay, and there's some years where he's batting like 220, and there's some years where he's not as good as the name sounds, but it'd be an overpay, and I wouldn't mind it. It'd be somebody that's an upgrade at least, but they're not going to do it, and I don't think they're going to pay somebody like Bellinger. I honestly think that they might. I don't know. Like, the only other option, like, go give Tio re-sign him on 1 year. I know you didn't give him the qualifying offer, but bring him back. I thought there was like random talks about that on Twitter the other day. There's like small moves you can make maybe here or there, bring in an outfielder or a third baseman, but I just don't think they're going to do it. I think they brought in Mitch Haniger because they think if he can stay healthy, which is a big if, like maybe we can have him out there with Canzone and platoon them. And I just think unfortunately, like we said, Jerry's hands are tied. I think he's just trying his best to do patchwork, and he might not get up to the money that we were at last year, even though he said we were going to try to do it, and we're just going to roll with this team and try to win 88 games. It sounds unfortunate, but I think that's what's going to happen because they won't spend the money. They're not going to – I just don't see them going and signing, a guy where you have to pay a lot for Matt Chapman or Cody Bellinger. And so it's either going to be some patch moves like yesterday, which do make you a little bit better. I'm not saying patch moves as in – they're doing nothing, but they're kind of just moves, right? Not like nothing crazy.
Externally, so that would be it for the offseason, but I'm wondering what the feeling would be like internally, because this was a big offseason of selling your own players on a reason to stay. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think this offseason did it. I don't think it gave any indication to Cal Raleigh or George Kirby or J.P. Crawford or anybody that they should do anything.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, and I've said this to Sammy multiple times before, and I think we're far away from it now. But in 3 to 4 years, if we don't put in a good contender around Julio, what's stopping him from demanding a trade?
I don't really think that would happen. I think he is genuinely content with being in Seattle, and I don't think a 3 to 4 year window would be quite enough where he'd do something like that. And again, like if Mike Trout hasn't done it in his decade-long tenure with, or longer with it's about a decade. With the Angels.
Yeah.
I guess a little longer than a decade. Sorry. Then I don't know if Julio would really do that. I think he's genuinely content to be here.
I hope so.
I don't think in 3 to 4 years you'd see him do that, but I can't predict the future either. So I'm just guessing here.
Yeah, it's but I do think they didn't show the players that there's any reason to have hope. I mean, like, we had a weird Cal's had a lot of comments, right? Like, throughout the end of the season and now in the off season, and I think the players were waiting for something like exciting to happen, and I don't think they got what they were looking for at all. I think it's just kind of a bummer to look at it. Look where we're at now compared to the end of last year. I think we're about the exact same team maybe after some of these last moves, but I thought there was a clear way to. Like, I still don't understand. I know they're trying to say maybe it was a salary shed, but I don't understand trading away Gino. Like, I would prefer to have him at third right now. I'd rather just have him there, and I feel like it would be better for the clubhouse, and I think it'd feel like we're trying to win. It's interesting that the team that just went to the World Series that has always, like, you would think the Diamondbacks would operate cheaper than a team in Seattle, but they don't. They win, and they're like, oh, let's try to get this guy for our team that we're trying to get better after going to a World Series. And meanwhile, we send him out for, it was Vargas and saving some money. And that to me is still, I'm still not understanding why that move would be done other than money.
I'm curious to see what everything's going to sound like from the clubhouse maybe in a year from now. I don't know if it's hard to get someone on the record saying this stuff because these guys all have reputations they like and they want to keep a good standing with the fan base. Totally understandable. Get it. Also, if you're under contract, you're under contract. There's not much you can do about that. But internally, when multiple guys speak out on their own for stuff you're lacking to do, and as the offseason progresses on, they continue to be proved right of how they believe you think the way a baseball franchise should be operated, and they don't believe that you don't care enough to win. And they're like, well, why would I want to be here? And when they say, why would I want to be here, they're also going to tell every free agent and every free agent, because if you're traded, you don't have control over that. Every free agent, it's like, don't go there if you're trying to win. They don't care.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look, Kyle Seager had some effect on that. I mean, you think he told Corey when he was a free agent, "Oh, go sign with Seattle"? I have my doubts about that.
Yeah, he had a great relationship.
He definitely did not
with the front office too.
Me saying I have my doubts is the nice way of saying he absolutely did not tell Corey Seager.
He absolutely told him, "Don't come here."
When Corey Seager was after the clinch doing his post-game press conference on Fox Sports and was mentioning, man, I love how much we've invested in our roster and spent money. Do you guys think that was not a random act of speaking off the top of his head? No, that was intentional. The location, the opponent, the clinch, that was intentional. That was not just a coincidence of the reason.
Yeah, like an ownership that spends money and builds the team around us, and it was like, oh, interesting.
Yep, I think he had an idea what he was doing.
Brother.
I think he had an idea what he was doing as soon as that series started, and Kyle was like, "Hey, buddy, here's what we do.
Yeah.
Throw me a bone.
Make a comment for me."
Yeah,
yeah.
No, I will say that if they make the playoffs and go on some run this year, winning fixes everything. So of course, if they were to go on some run, you're not going to hear these players speaking out and saying ownership doesn't care enough because, again, if they win, they win. But if they miss the playoffs again, then it's going to be really interesting to hear what some of these guys say.
Yeah, I think it's and you never know with baseball, right? You get hot at the right time. I mean, we've seen it the last 2 years, right, where there's a little stretch where you get hotter than other times of the year, and it helps you get to a better place. I mean, the year we made the playoffs, that whatever the winning streak was, it makes, that's what changes the entire season. You get hot. So hopefully this year we can do something similar. It would fix a lot of things, like you said. You get hot at the right time, you win games, and you never know what happens. And I think, despite where there's a lot of negative feeling about the Mariners in some ways, there's a lot of pros and cons, but I think the one thing that you just said that's important, early, I think you said it earlier, which is, one is you get hot at the right time, and that's probably what the Mariners are looking to do, is maybe we're an 85 to 88 win team that can get hot at the right time and make that 90 wins and see what happens. And then if you win, it cures everything, and I think it kind of changes how people are feeling for the year. And to TJ's point, you're not going to hear anything in the beginning of the season, right? Because they're going to wait and see. Is the vibe good? Do they start winning games? Then nobody's going to say anything about ownership or spending or whatever, but they'll only say it if things are going bad. So I think for me, I'm just at this point now where I think this is the roster, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and just be a blind fan per usual, right? And just say, I hope it works, and just try to be positive going into the rest of the season and see what happens. I think that's kind of where we're at.
I think everybody that tries to have a positive outlook on the team is going to say similar things. They may make another move or two. We don't know. There's still a decent amount of time between now and opening day or even the start of spring training. But Jerry DiPoto talking about these trades, he said they're not done, but he said if we were to roll out this roster right now, his words were he would feel good about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. Well, I know we took up a lot of your guys' time today. We appreciate it. Anything big planned for the season with the podcast? With you guys do anything big?
I think we've got some ideas in mind. I mean, nothing's definitive yet, but our goal with it is, as year 2 of doing this podcast kicks off here, to, just hopefully keep it building. Hopefully people are continue to tune in. We try our best to be engaging. We always try to think of unique, creative ideas. I hope as the season goes along, we try to continue to think of some more ways that we can be creative. But I would say for now, we're still kind of, I don't want to say working through things, but we're trying to just brainstorm and plan, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think more importantly, just find a way of making our content better, because the name of the game nowadays, as you guys know, because you guys do a lot of it, it's just having a presence online. That's it. Gotta find a way to get people to watch you and engage with your stuff, even if they're not clicking on the full podcast. It's finding a way to get more people to watch your clips on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or any of those platforms. Just find a better way to be more efficient and more creative, and in the end grow. Because if you told us after 1 year of doing it where we'd be right now, we'd probably be pretty flattered. So year 2, those expectations rise, and we want to not only exceed those expectations, but also the process of doing it, make it more efficient and better as well. So I think it's great. And along with that, keep getting great guests, keep really just diving into the really important things that we think people need to know. And it's reflected well. So very exciting. It's been a great first year, and we can't wait to continue on year 2.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing a great job.
Excellent job.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. That's super nice of you guys. We appreciate it a ton. Yeah, we try our best.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing great. It's I've tuned into a lot of your guys' stuff, and it's fun. And I think one thing that a lot of people just don't know, there's a lot of time that goes into these things, right? It's not. I know for some people they'll think it's just you just turn on a mic and talk. There's a lot that goes into editing, finding guests, planning things, making content, working on social media. It's not the easiest thing in the world. No. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it's not the easiest thing. So I think you guys are doing a great job, and not everyone also has the I guess the guts to go out there and put themselves on screen and talk to people. So I think you guys are doing great, especially for year 1. You wouldn't think you guys are year 1 people doing this. So
some people just think you just sit and talk on the microphone. It's like, no, think of the time commitment of a second job. Of course, you have a lot more fun doing this job than other ones, but some people don't want to do that. And they don't. Right. They won't. 98% of people don't want to say, well, I have to spend an extra 20 hours a week not keeping time to myself. Well, no thanks. Well, then the rest of us who actually do want to do it, make sure you invest that time properly, and good things can happen. So we're very appreciative of everyone who's tuned in and listened our way, and hopefully keeps enjoying our content as well.
I love it. And give us the ats on all the platforms. Is it just
at MarineLayerPod on every platform?
Yeah. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Twitter. It's just at MarineLayerPod. My Twitter handles Lyle_Goldstein, and yours, TJ, is what? Just TJ.
It's just at TJ Mathewson.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy. I think we're pretty universal across social media. If anyone listening who maybe hasn't listened to us before is interested to check us out, that's where we're at.
Did you guys recently do? I think you guys had a Mariner player on recently too, right?
Just recently, we had Dom Cantone on, who was great. We love talking to him.
Yeah, I think I tuned into about half of it so far, like literally like a day ago or 2 days ago. Oh. I didn't get through the whole thing yet, but that's pretty cool. Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah, Dom's a great guy. And Ty Adcock, we had him on a couple weeks earlier than that. Like, he blew us away. That dude he's a thinker. He has some awesome stories.
I don't tune into that one. I'll tune into it. I love it. Well, I appreciate you guys a lot for coming on today and talking some Mariners. It was good timing with the trade that happened and everything, and we'll see where the season goes. I'm excited and excited to hopefully let's see if we can get to the playoffs again.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
that'd be beautiful.
Sammy, George, thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We really appreciate it, guys.